Hi diddly ho, Prepperinos. How do you manage a pipeline shutdown and fuel shortage like an emergency manager? Let's talk about what you can do to handle this situation like a pro, even if it caught you off guard. First, all disasters are local, so you worry about what is right in front of you and how it impacts you. It's good to stay informed about the big picture, but you don't need to get worked up about it if it's out of your control. If there's nothing you can do about it, then why worry? Also, if there is something you can do about it, then do it. And why worry? This pipeline shutdown is a short-term, relatively isolated problem, although it's indicative of a larger problem. But things will work out, and most of the country will likely not be impacted by this specific incident at all. Those affected will just have to get through the impact as well as they can. Hopefully, this will just act as a drill and there aren't any significant impacts, although we want to make sure we're ready if there are. So, how would you manage this as the emergency manager of your own home? What I always ask myself about any emergency is, whose problem is this? Which really means, whose responsibility is impacted? Because if it's a facilities problem, you call facilities. If it's an information technology problem, you call IT. If it's a security problem, you call security. Ultimately, you want business to go on as usual, so you need to identify who can resolve the problem the quickest. Well, since your organization is probably just you and your family, you don't have teams of people to resolve it, and you are responsible for every impact. So you could instead ask, what kind of problem is this? It's a supply chain / logistics problem, at least as far as it affects you. Because to the Colonial Pipeline Company, it's a cybersecurity and IT problem, and much more. And we're not going to talk about the worldwide implications of cyber warfare, but this incident cascades down to being a supply problem for you. So if you look at it from a logistics point of view, you have a few options. Because you use fuel every time you drive, you should make sure your car is topped off. It may be too late for some people to do this, while all the kinks get worked out and they try to redirect resources. If you're still able, then go ahead and top off. However, there is a preparedness aspect to this. Preparedness isn't what you do when there's an emergency. It's what you should have done already. So, if at all possible, you should have some fuel on hand, even just one can of gas, if that's all you can do. Ideally, you'll have a few cans and cycle through them. You can add fuel stabilizer to them so they will keep longer, but if you just cycle through them, either by using the gas for your lawnmower or just emptying the oldest gas can into your car every once in a while, then refilling it, and then you do this regularly, you won't need to stabilize the fuel because you'll use it often enough. If you have a generator on hand, that's another reason that you want to have fuel with stabilizer on hand, so you're always covered. The other preparedness aspect is to always fill your car when it gets around half tank instead of waiting until it's empty. Your only cost there is time, since you'll use the fuel anyway. So, if it's too late for you to do those preparedness steps, just jot them down as lessons learned and opportunities for improvement. Okay, now we're responding to the supply chain disruption. Response is what you are doing during an emergency. Then recovery comes after. If we failed to prepare by having fuel on hand, then we either need to source new fuel or we need to reduce our fuel use, or both. Let's assume you cannot acquire any more fuel, or you choose not to fight the crowds or pay higher prices if that is what is happening in your area. A potential plan for you is to reduce your fuel use, and that would mean eliminating any unnecessary driving. Maybe you'll skip mowing your lawn this week. You could skip going to the store, or maybe have your groceries delivered, as long as they keep that up. Instead of making several trips out, you can combine all your errands for the week into one trip, or just go without some things. If possible, work from home to reduce the fuel you use on your commute. Carpool with a friend or coworker if you have to drive. If you have the option between two vehicles, use the one that is more fuel efficient. I can hear all you middle-aged men uncovering your motorcycles. So situational awareness is important. So keep an eye on the situation locally and nationally and try to determine your plan of action as it gets better or worse. But don't wait until you run out of resources to start taking action. With every incident or exercise, you should conduct an after-action review. You go over the events of the incident, discuss and write down what went well, what didn't go so well. Identify your strengths and give yourselves a pat on the back for a job well done. But also identify how things could have gone better and write those down as well. It may also be helpful to get an outsider's view. If you have the ability to store a little bit of gas but didn't, then write that down as an opportunity for improvement. If you always wait until your car is empty before you fill it up, write that down. If you end up using all the fuel you have running unnecessary errands or street racing, write that down. Then write down specific actions you can take to avoid that next time and follow up on them. If you thought things would go a certain way or things didn't go according to plan, then you may need to change your plan for the future. When you have a plan, then you practice it or use it in responding to an actual emergency. You can run into problems one of two ways. You either didn't follow the plan exactly, so you'll need to go back and review it and practice doing it better. That's known as training. Or you followed the plan in your response, but it didn't work, which means you need to change your plan. Recovering from an emergency in this way becomes preparedness for the next emergency. At any point during this cycle, you can take the opportunity to limit an emergency's impact or keep emergencies from happening. Those are known as mitigation and prevention. But the clearly defined cycle of emergency management includes preparedness, response, and recovery. Thanks for watching. I hope this video will help you to not get stranded on the side of the road with an empty gas tank. Please like, share, and subscribe. Remember, we're preparing for every day, not doomsday.